April 17th, 2024. Harish Chidambaran rings the NASDAQ opening bell. His company, iLearning Engines, has just gone public. Market cap, $1.5 billion. Revenue, $421 million. An AI company built on a decade of work, a Stanford degree, and a story about a son watching his mother fight cancer and deciding that technology could help people get the right information when they needed it most. 4 months later, a short-selling firm called Hindenburg Research published a report. The title did most of the work. iLearning Engines, an artificial intelligence spacey, with artificial partners and artificial revenue. The AI was real, the partners weren't, the revenue wasn't, and the $1.5 billion valuation built on top of it? That was the most artificial thing of all. This is the story of how a NASDAQ-listed AI company fabricated virtually all of its customers, cycled $144 million through shell companies run by its own employees and their family members, and did it for 5 years before the Department of Justice came knocking. To understand how that's even possible, we need to go back to where it started. Harish Chidambaran is exactly the kind of founder you want to believe in. He grew up in India, came to America, earned a master's in electrical engineering from the University of Idaho, then added a management degree from Stanford's Graduate School of Business. Before starting his own company, he was a microprocessor architect at Sun Microsystems. Not a buzzword guy, not a pitch deck guy, an engineer who understood how machines think at the hardware level. Then, his mother was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Chidambaran watched the healthcare system struggle, not with treatment, but with knowledge. Nurses and doctors couldn't always access the right information at the right moment. Training was outdated, scattered, delivered in formats nobody actually used. He became convinced that AI could fix this, route the right content to the right person in real time, turn institutional knowledge into something measurable and alive. In 2010, he founded a company called iHealth Engines. The company quickly expanded beyond healthcare. Any large organization, banks, insurers, manufacturers, government agencies, had the same problem. Expensive training programs that employees ignored, critical knowledge that lived in someone's head and disappeared when they left. iHealth Engines became iLearning Engines. The market got bigger, the pitch got sharper. For over a decade, the company grew quietly and privately. No splashy funding rounds, no magazine covers, just a founder with a Stanford pedigree, a compelling origin story, and a product that, on paper, solved a problem every large organization in the world actually had. By 2023, iLearning was reporting $421 million in annual revenue. A SPAC merger would take them public on NASDAQ in April 2024. The story was perfect. Almost too perfect. The timing of the NASDAQ listing could not have been more calculated. April 2024, AI was the only story in the market. Every week brought a new billion-dollar valuation, a new enterprise AI platform, a new founder claiming their technology was going to transform how the world worked. Investors weren't asking hard questions. They were afraid of missing the next one. The numbers iLearning brought to the listing were staggering. $421 million in revenue for 2023, a client roster that included major healthcare systems, financial institutions, and government agencies, an AI platform that had been running, they said, for over a decade. NASDAQ published a press release on their behalf, calling it taking the AI industry by storm. Within days of listing, the market cap hit $1.5 billion. And from the outside, everything checked out. The founder had the credentials, the mission had the emotional weight, the revenue growth was in the filings, audited and submitted and signed. These are not vibes, these are public documents. This is a company on NASDAQ. There was one number buried in the pre-merger disclosures that almost nobody looked at. On the day iLearning Engines prepared to go public as a $1.5 billion company, It had $800,000 in cash and $22 million in debt. A company reporting $421 million in annual revenue had less money in the bank than a mid-sized dental practice. Nobody asked why. The bell rang, the stock went up, and Harish Chidambaran smiled for the cameras. On August 29, 2024, Hindenburg Research published their report. If you're not familiar with Hindenburg, they're a short-selling firm, meaning they make money when stock prices fall. They find companies they believe are fraudulent or overvalued, publish their research, and profit from the collapse. It's a controversial business model. It's also, in this case, what stopped a 5-year fraud from running indefinitely. The report's central finding was simple and devastating. Approximately 96% of iLearning Engine's revenue ran through a single, undisclosed related party. The customers weren't independent companies paying for a service. They were entities connected to iLearning itself, cycling money in circles to make the revenue line look real. Hindenburg also pointed out that the company had entered its SPAC merger while effectively insolvent, the $800,000 in cash, the $22 million in debt, and that the SPAC sponsor had been desperate, running out of time to close a deal before their acquisition window expired. The stock fell 55% the day the report came out. iLearning Engines responded by calling the report false and misleading, and said they were considering legal action against Hindenburg. Standard playbook, buy time. Hope the news cycle moves on. It didn't move on, because what Hindenburg had found on the outside, the DOJ was about to find from the inside. Here is what was actually happening inside iLearning Engines. Starting in 2019, 5 years before the NASDAQ listing, Chidambaran and CFO Farhan Naqvi began building a network of fake customers, not cutting corners, not inflating numbers by 10 or 20%. Fabricating virtually all of it from scratch systematically for half a decade. The mechanics were meticulous. iLearning employees, and in some cases their family members, incorporated shell companies and opened bank accounts in those companies' names. They built fake websites so the entities would look real to auditors. They signed contracts worth tens of millions of dollars each between iLearning and these shells. Contracts signed by the same people on both sides of the table. Then came the money. Funds raised from investors and lenders were wired to these fake customers as supposed licensing payments. The fake customers immediately wired the money back. Over $144 million went through this cycle. By 2023, the scheme had inflated iLearning's reported revenue to $421 million, of which at least 90% was fiction. While this was running, Chidambaran personally received over $500 million in company stock, a $700,000 annual salary, and $12.5 million in restricted stock units. The company went public in April 2024. The bell rang. 4 months later, Hindenburg tore the roof off. After the stock collapse, what was left unraveled fast. In December 2024, iLearning Engines filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. In February 2025, every remaining employee was laid off. In March 2025, the bankruptcy converted to Chapter 7, full liquidation. The company was gone. On April 17, 2026, exactly 2 years after the NASDAQ listing, Harish Chidambaran and Farhan Naqvi were indicted on 10 counts by the Eastern District of New York, operating a continuing financial crimes enterprise, securities fraud, wire fraud. If convicted, a minimum of 10 years in federal prison. The indictment noted the scheme had run until April 2025, meaning they were still round-tripping money 4 months after going public, while the stock was still trading. Here's what stays with me about iLearning Engines. The origin story was real. The mother's cancer diagnosis was real. The problem Chidambaran said he wanted to solve was real. He used every bit of that to walk into rooms and get people to stop asking questions. Because who challenges a Stanford engineer with a sick mother and $421 million in revenue? That's not a technology story, that's a con. And the most artificial thing about an AI company that faked its customers, faked its revenue, and faked its way onto NASDAQ was the founder. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe. There's more.